He's Dan Orlovsky, the former NFL quarterback. You can check him out weekdays on ESPN's NFL Live at 4 Eastern. Also contributes to some other programs on the mothership, including Get Up, Sports Center, First Take, and more. I always learn something when we have him on, and Dan joins us on the program. Dan, good morning. Explain that logic to me that the Niners can't play at home, but they're going to play in Arizona, where the COVID situation as far as testing is higher, twice as high as it is in Santa Clara.
Be talking about football often, so my brain cells can't figure that out, but I know they found a way to make their games happen, which is the most important thing to the NFL, and hopefully everyone stays safe, but that's above my pay grade.
But it feels like this is whatever it takes to get to the postseason. We saw this with the NBA in the bubble, the NHL in the bubble. We saw this with Major League Baseball. Does the NFL have blinders on? That it's just whatever it takes, we're playing these games, even if it's not a true representation of the teams that we expect to be on the field?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I think that the reality is this. I actually got into a friend of mine who's an attorney last night about this because she asked me, do you think the season's going to be viewed the same or watered down? I said, no, I think because there's a lot of challenges tied to it that it'll still be weighed equally, if not greater, because of those challenges. I said, I do think that this week needs to be a huge learning example for the NFL because, you know, the Ravens have to play their game because of their COVID outbreak. They got 1,000 starters out, but a lot of their quarterbacks out, which is obviously a huge deal. And it may not be that big a deal because it's the regular season and there's 16 games and it's not a lose and go home sudden death environment. But what would happen if it was the first or second round of the playoffs and it's Patrick Mahomes or it's Aaron Rodgers? And those guys can't play in that game because of contact tracing or something. That's a huge problem for the NFL. And it is sudden death, win or go home type of thing. And so I get it that they want to get to the playoffs, but they need to learn from this past week because that would be unacceptable.
I was watching the game yesterday, and I thought, who's going to lose this game? It wasn't who's going to win this game. But I got the feeling that the Steelers were playing down to, and I give the Ravens credit, but did I learn more from the Ravens? Should I have learned more about the Ravens or the Steelers yesterday?
I think yesterday's game is a really difficult game just to judge the Steelers off of. Haven't had a lot of structure. They've missed practices. They played once. They didn't know when their game was going to happen. So I think it is a tough game to judge them off of how good of a football team they are. The Steelers are a really good football team. We know what their flaw is. They're not explosive on offense. It's going to be hard to win a Super Bowl without being explosive in 2020, but they are super clutch. I mean, they got guys that are clutch. They're going to be in every fourth quarter game, and they've got guys and Big Ben and really Juju who are clutch players. I think we learned a little bit about the Ravens defensively. I agree with you. I thought the Ravens actually lost that game. I was texting our NFL Live crew, and I said, if I was the Ravens, I would not throw more than 3 passes in the second half. And there was a drive of theirs in the back end of the third quarter, and it got to 2nd and 8 at like the 40-yard line, and they went drop back pass, sack, 3rd and 20. I would have just run the ball, just continue to run the football because you weren't going to win that game throwing it. Yeah. You were going to lose the game throwing it. And I think we learned a little bit about the Ravens, more so than the Steelers.
Yeah, I was sort of, I thought what the Ravens showed me is something maybe you build off of, and Chris Collinsworth talked about that, you know, maybe they look back on this and say, you know, we kind of came together when nobody thought we could come together. But I forget who we had on who said it seems like Lamar Jackson's taken a step back, and I wonder if defenses have taken a step up at the same time to coincide with Lamar Jackson. Like, is he taking a step back, or the defense has sort of stepped up a little bit more here?
I think the defenses have stepped up a little bit more. You know, Dan, when he was drafted, when he was coming out, I really said 2 things about Lamar. I said, listen, Lamar's got a chance to be a really good player if he used the right way. And they have used him the right way up until this point. But I also said this, when you take a guy like Lamar, you have to go all in with everything. You have to go all in with scheme, and you have to go all in with the people around that scheme. It can't be a traditional NFL offensive roster. You have to have very specific offensive linemen that are part of your run game. They're better run game blockers than pass game blockers. You have to have very specific tight ends that are part of your run game more so than your vertical stretch pass game. And you got to have very specific receivers. And so to make it work, they went all in. And when one of those pieces gets taken away, it has a bigger impact than your traditional NFL offensive personnel wise. Because, when you're a Green Bay Packers, you could have a multitude of backs that fit your offense, or offensive linemen, or wide receivers, because they don't have to be so specific to the scheme. With the Ravens, they have to. And when one gets picked off, it's a bigger crack than a normal crack. And I think if you look at this team compared to last year's, like, the offensive line is different, and it's harder to find those people to replace those different offensive linemen. The same with the tight end. So it's the perfect storm of, like, the injuries have been impactful. Defenses have caught up. You're more predictable because your playbook is smaller when you go all in that offense. And I think Lamar I don't look at it as Lamar has taken this step back. I think the confusion that they created against defenses last year isn't as confusing.
He's Dan Orlovsky, ESPN NFL Live analyst. If I said you can have the Chiefs or the field to win the Super Bowl?
Chiefs in a runaway. No one's beating them. I wrote this down this morning. This is how the Chiefs are going to not win the Super Bowl this year. I want to find my notes. Okay. Yeah. The Chiefs to not win the Super Bowl, that you have to hope that they play their C game, which they haven't really this year. You have to hold the ball as long as you possibly can. I don't care how you hold it. You have to hold it. If it's your run game, great. If it's your perimeter screen game, it's the quick game and the pass game, that's fine. You have to force threes and not sevens on defense. At least 3 times, you got to make them kick a field goal and not a touchdown. You have to make them drive the field. You've got to stop the explosive pass game. So many coordinators go, we got to stop the run game. No, you have to stop the explosive pass game. Make Mahomes play boring football. You've got to be able to have a quarterback that can create special plays as much as Mahomes does. He's got to match the I went above the X's and O's plays as much as Mahomes does. So, and then in the fourth quarter, you got to make more big plays. People think it's the Tennessee Titans that can beat the Chiefs. If you told me they had Taylor Lewan, I'd be a little bit more on board with that. I think the team that can do it is the Buffalo Bills. I think the Bills can go punch for punch with them offensively. I think their quarterback can make some weird plays that go above X's and O's, and they can be explosive offensively.
But Kansas City was lucky to win the Super Bowl last year, Dan. I go back to the knee injury with Patrick Mahomes. Then you get to the playoffs where they could have easily lost all of those games.
But nothing is different. That's fair. But if they go down 14, I still 100% unequivocally believe in them. Their quarterback does so much stuff with his physical talent and then his brain. He sees things so fast. Because if they go down 14, they're still going to have 50 plus snaps. That's why the holding the football is such a big deal. And yes, they probably could have and arguably should have lost the Super Bowl, but that was a ridiculously good defense in San Francisco. Another team that I would give you I think the Colts have a chance because they're cut the same way as San Francisco was last year. I look at that offense and I go, there's no flaw. Kelce's the best player in football that's not a quarterback. And
wait, you think Kelce he's the best player who's not a quarterback?
Yeah.
Wow. Over Aaron Donald?
Dan, he does what?
Over Aaron Donald?
I mean, for me, yes, because
Okay.
the stuff, just because he brings so much offense to their offense before the ball ever gets snapped. I mean, the amount of times they place him in specific positions to get the coverage is such an advantage because it doesn't just affect the outcome of the play after the snap. He will go out there and they'll put a corner out there and the Mahomes knows it's going to be zone and then he'll go two high safeties. Here comes run game. And for me, that 6-yard run is huge because now there's nothing you as a defense can do. I can literally go to the line of scrimmage and get into whatever play I want. As great as Aaron is, he's remarkable. but he doesn't create defense before the snap as much as Kelce creates offense before
But
the snap.
do you think we're going to look at Kelce as being the greatest tight end of all time when it's all said and done?
I mean, there's if they go on the dynasty run like I expect them to over the next 5 years, absolutely. I mean, he's on a historic season run this year.
Like, is Gronk the greatest tight end of all time?
Yes, Gronk's the greatest tight end of all time, and Gronk is the first guy that did this stuff.
Yeah.
Like Gronk is the first guy that did all this for Brady. And I know he was probably more impactful in the run game. I'm not a person who looks at that stuff. At the end of the day, does my offense score a lot of points, and does this guy help us do it? And so that's why I think Kelce's got a chance to do that.
You had a tweet a couple of days ago that I mentioned on the air that here are the Saints who haven't been fully assembled. Michael Thomas, Drew Brees, they played 2 games together. That defense is great.
Yeah.
Are the Saints the team to beat in the NFC?
They are, and I was hard-headed on this for about 5 weeks, 6 weeks of this season, because I still go, how are they going to be explosive on offense? I don't think you can win a Super Bowl without being explosive on offense right now. I just don't.
Because you're going to have to get 28 points at least, maybe even more on Kansas City, right?
Yeah, and I go, can you screen pass and efficient pass game your way down the field that consistently and create those chunk plays to win a bunch of games, especially when you need to in the playoffs right now? And I struggle with buying into that. But at the same time, the difference between the defense right now and to where it was, mid-October, so to speak, and certainly in September, was like they're not giving up the what are you guys doing boneheaded, blown coverage plays. They've, rectified a lot of that. I think the addition of Quan Alexander was huge for their linebacker core and coverage. So that's been really good. They're playing much better on defense. But the fact that they're sitting at 9-2 and haven't had those guys just tells you 2 things. The depth of their football team is real, and that they're as well coached as anyone in football. I mean, Sean is as good as anyone in football. We can put Sean with Bill Belichick's staff. We can put Sean with Andy Reid's staff. We can put Sean with McVay's staff. And 2 things that get separated or separate you in the playoffs outside of having a stupid quarterback is you got to have depth and you got to be well coached. And the Saints are right there.
Always great to talk to you, Dan. We appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
That's Dan Orlovsky, ESPN NFL Live analyst. You can catch him weekdays on ESPN NFL Live at 4 Eastern. Also on Get Up and SportsCenter, First Take.